Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Agudath Israel Etz Ahayem Synagogue here in Montgomery. I am Rabbi Scott Kramer. Welcome to Bert Shepard and I and all of you coming online. We are praying out of Siddur Lev Shalem. The Siddur is downloadable from our website, aieamontgomery.org. so that you can follow along or use a Siddur of your own choice. In any event, we begin page 103. We rise, if you are able, for the Birchot HaShachar, the blessings of the morning. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech v'vina lavkin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tzomahom. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben charin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Pokeach Ivrahim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Mabi Sharmim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Matir Asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Zokev Kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Rakal Haaretz al Hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Sh'asa likot sarki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Oz Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Ot Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hanotein la'oev koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Uteneinu hayom v'chol yom l'chein l'chesed rachamim menech v'nechoen v'tingmalenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomer chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. You may be seated. We continue page 112, Psalm 92. Hayom yom Shabbat kodesh shebuchim buchim b'veit hamikdash mizmor shir le'yom haShabbat. Odinu v'un b'sev d'shinim chanim yu lagid keshelat suri v'lo avlatabo. Page 120, Psalm 30. Mizmor shir chanakat b'ile David. Hafachת misperi l'mochli pitakti saki v'azcheni simcha l'mahen yizmer chavad v'lo yidom Adonai Elohai le'olam odeka. We rise for Baruch She'amar, page 122. Yai lai lai la lai ya la lai la lai la lai ya la lai 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 ya la lai la lai la la lai ya lai la lai la 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 lai ya la lai la 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 lai ya la lai la la lai ya la lai lai ya lai la la lai ya la 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 lai ya la lai la la lai ya la lai la 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 lai ya lai la 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 lai ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Baruch she'amar ve'haya olam Baruch hu severeshit Baruch mevi yoseh Baruch ozerum kayem Baruch merachim ala haaretz Baruch merachim ala habriot Baruch mishalem sachar tov l'reyav Baruch Hailad, V'kayam lanetzach, Baruch Podeo Matzil, Baruch Shemo. Yai lai lai la lai la lai la 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 lai, Yai la lai lai lai, Ya la lai la lai la la lai, Yai lai la 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 lai, Ya la lai la 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 lai, Ya la lai la la lai, Ya la lai lai, Yai lai la la lai, Ya la 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 lai, Ya la lai la la lai, Ya la lai la 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 lai, Yai lai la 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 lai, Ya la lai la lai lai lai, Ya la lai la lai la la lai, Ya lai la lai lai lai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ho'elu v'racham amehu b'mafiyam u'mishabach, u'mefaoral b'shon chasidav avdav, u'v'shirei David avdecha. Yachid chel mi melech mishabach v'nesh magado baruch atah Adonai melech mehulal batishbachot. You may be seated. We continue page 136. Ashrei yoshvei veitecha od yalalu chasela. Tehillat Adonai debar pivi v'reiko b'ser shem kadshol elam v'ad v'nachne nevarechya mi'atav yad olam. Hallelujah. Page 141, Psalm 150. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 b'kadsho, hallelujah, b'kiyauzo, hallelujah, v'gvotav, hallelujah, karav, gudlo, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, b'teka shofar, hallelujah, b'neve v'chinor, hallelujah, b'tof u'macho, hallelujah, b'minim v'yugav, hallelujah, 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 v'tziutz le'shama, hallelujah, b'tziutz re'trua, kol hanshama tehallelujah, hallelujah, 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 kol hanshama tehallelujah, hallelujah. Kol hanshama tehallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Baruch Adonai le'olam amen v'amen. Baruch B'tzion shechen Yerushalayim hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Elohim Elohei Yisrael sen nifla levado. Uvaruch shem kavodo li'lavim melech vet koharetz. Amen v'amen. Page 145. Nishmat kol chai, tivarech et shimecha, O Adonai Eloheinu. Mid melach mishvelach mi'aharoch lachoel agadol gibor v'hanora el elyon kanei shamayim va'aretz nhelelachon shebechacha unfarchen v'rechet shem kodeshecha kamor leDavid barchi nafshi atarnai v'chol kerovayet shem kodesho ho'eb dazmozecha gadol bechavod shemecha הגיבור לנצח ונמנורותיך, המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא, שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו. וכתוב רננו צדיקים באדוני לישרים נאווה תהילה, בפיhi ישרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך. ובראשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ומקלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר לרמם להדל, לברך להלל ולקלס על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות. דוד בן ישי עבדך משיחך, ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. ברכות והודות מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל הודות אדון הנפלאות. הבוחר בשירי זמרה מלכהו חי העולמים. Shabbat Shalom once again. We now transition to our Shacharit service, beginning on page 149. Please rise if you are able for the Baruch Hu, the call to worship. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai Varach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch et Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam. Yotzei Havarech Oshech Oseh Shalom Uvarei et HaKol. You may be seated. Page 150. Hakol yotuch v'yakol yishabechucha. Henker Adonai Eloheinu b'olam hazeh v'yeina zulad machin l'chayei olam haba. אפס פרוטוקול ללמות המשיח ואין טוב מלך מושיענו לתחיית המתים. page 151. אל אדון הכל המעשים ברוך ומברך בפי כל נשמה גדלו וטובו מדלי עולם דת ותבונה סובבים אותו המתגורר חיות הקודש ונדר בכבוד על המרכבה זכות ומישור לפני כיסו חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו הטובים מיורות שבר אלוהינו יצרם בדת בבינה ובהשכל כוח וגבורה נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה נעזיבם בכל העולם שמחים בצאצם וששים בבואם עושים ביים הרצון גאונם ביער וכבוד נותנים לשמוע צלה ורינה לזכר מלכותו קרא לשמש ויזרח אורם והקים צורתו ונע שבק נותנים לו כל צבא מרון תפארת וגדולה שרפים ויופנים וחיותו קודש אלי 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 page 152. La'ela sheshavat mikol hamasim bayom hashvit alei v'shiv al kisei chevodo. Tiparach Moshieno Shavach Masyadech V'Yamarei Shasiti Yevaruchas Sela, page 153. Tiparach Surenu Makin V'Golen Berekedoshim. V'chulam potchim et b'yam b'kedushav Torah b'shirav zimra v'archim shabachim farim maritzim u'maktishim u'mamlichim et shem moel hamelech hagadol hagibor v'hanora kadoshu v'chulam kablim aleim u'malchut shamayim zeh mizeh ונודרים רשות זה לזה, לקדיש לעוצם בנחת רוח, בשפה ורבנים הקדושה, כולם כחרונים ויאמרים בהירה, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך על הארץ כבודו. ואופנים וחיות הקודש פגש קדום מנצל מצרפים, לימתם משבחי ויאמרים, Baruch v'Adonai mimkomo la'el baruch nimot yiteinu. Or chadash al Tzion da'i v'nizkeh chulanu mehera le'oro. Or chadash al Tzion da'i v'nizkeh Kulanu mehera le'aro, Baruch ata Adonai, Yotzer hamiorot, page 154. Ahava rabhavtanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chem lo gedola v'techa, Chamalta leinu, Avinu malkeinu, Ba'avor avotenu Shabbat chovecha Avinu malkeinu Vatlamden chukei chayim Kein techanenu lamdenu Avinu avarachaman Amrachim rachim aleinu V'tein belibenu lehavin Lavinu laskil lishmoa Lilmod o lilamed lishmor velasot O kayem et kol divrei Talmud Toratecha b'ahava Ve'ahenenu b'toratecha Ve'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha Ve'yached levavenu Le'ahava u'yira et shemecha V'lo nevosh le'olam voed V'lo nevosh le'olam voed Ki v'shem kadshecha Hagado v'hanora b'hatachnu Nagila v'nismecha b'shuatecha V'havienu le'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz V'tolichenu komemiut le'artzenu Ki elpo ve'yeshuatata Uvanu v'charta mikoam v'lashon V'keravtanu l'shimcha hagado selam beyamet L'hodo lecha u'yachedcha b'yahava Baruch Adonai Abocher b'yamo Yisrael b'yahava Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, והשיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך וקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, והיה אם שמוע תשמעו אל מצוותי. ויאמר אדוני משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת להם, ויעשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורתם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית, וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם שונאים אחריהם, למען תסגרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. לדובר קיים ושמו קיים וחיסונכם מלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת. We're on page 157, fourth line from the top of the page. Udvar Chaim Kamin. Emet shata Adonai Eloheinu velvetenu malkeinu melech avotenu goelenu goel avotenu yotzenu tzor yeshatenu podenu matzilenu melam shemecha ein Elohim zulatecha ezrat avotenu atahu me'olam. Ram v'nisa gadol v'nora mashpil gei magbi ashfalim motzi asirim fon aravim v'yozedalim v'yon eleamo b'yeit shavam elav tilod le'elad yon brachum brach Moshe v'nei Yitzchak neshira b'simcha rabba ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדור בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ובטחנו ממך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. We rise for the Amidah for Shabbat morning, page 159. We will chant the first three brachot out together. and then you may continue with the final 4 through page 166. Again, we begin 159. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Dovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zocher Chastei Avot ומביא גוי לפני בניהם למען שמו ביאהבה מלך עוזר פוקד ומשיח ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם מפוקד שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע מוריד הטל מכלכל חיים בחסד מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים והופך עולים ומתיר אסירים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מחמוכם בעל גבורות ומידו מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו משמי מרום ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ויאמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך על הארץ כבודו. אז בקול רעש גדול וחזק משמיעים קול מתנשאים למצרפים לימתם ברוך יאמרו ברוך אדוני ממקומו ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים ויעננו תירנה מלכותך כדבר אמור בשירי עוזך על ידי דוד משיח צדקך ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושת נקדיש קדושת נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם לעולם ועד לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך כי המלך גדול גדול וקדוש 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 אתה כי המלך גדול גדול וקדוש 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 אתה לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. If you've not finished your Amidah, please continue at your own pace. We will now transition to our virtual Torah service, beginning on page 168. When the ark is open, you may rise. 168. Ein kamocha va'Elohim Adonai v'ein k'maasecha malchutecha malchut ka'olamim u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam voed Adonai oz le'amo yitein Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom avarachamim eitiv avirtzoncha et Zion tivnecho mod Yerushalayim tivnecho mod Yerushalayim Ki v'echal vad batachnu melech eram v'nisa Adon olamim. We rise. Vayehi ben Aharon vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai V'yafotzu oyevecha, v'yanusu misanecha, mipanecha, ki mitzion teitzei Torah, ki mitzion teitzei Torah, u'davar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael, b'kedushato. Barich shemei damari alma, barich yitrav yatrach. Page 170. An Agudath Kodesh Barichu Bebeyan Arachet Velish Me Kadisha Kadisha Yakira Anna Emar Tushpechan Beyan Arachet Beyan Arachet Velish me kadisha, kadisha yakira, adna emar tushpechan, yeirava kadamach, detiftach libi bio rayeta, vetashlim mishalin de libi, velibo de cholamach, Yisrael, Letavul Chaim Velishlam. Amen. Page 171. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadlu Ladonai Iti Nechamim Shemo Yachtav Lecha Adonai Agedula V'Agevura V'Hatiferet V'Hanetzach V'Hahod Kicho B'Shamayim V'Aretz Kicho B'Shamayim V'Aretz Lecho Adonai Hamamlacha V'Yamit Naseh Lecho L'Rosh Romemu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'Hishtachavu L'Hadam Raglav Kadoshu Romemu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu V'Hishtachavu L'Har Kadsho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. You may be seated. Again, welcome to our Shabbat morning service. The Torah portion this week usually is paired with last week's portion, Acharemot and Kedoshim this year, because it is a leap year in the Jewish calendar, which means we have an extra 4 Shabbatot because we have a leap month. Most of the portions are separate from each other, so we read Kedoshim on its own. Kedoshim comes from starts in the 19th chapter of the book of Leviticus. This is by tradition called the Holiness Code. This probably, with very few exceptions, is arguably the most important chapter in the entire Torah, the 19th chapter of the book of Leviticus. It is just full of ways that God wants us to live our lives, such as you should love your neighbor as yourself, which Hillel was asked to define Judaism while standing on one foot. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. Everything else is just commentary. Go learn from that. So I will chant 3 aliyot as our practice during pandemic when we do a virtual Torah service. I'll translate and beginning Leviticus chapter 19, verse 15, which, if you have your Etz Ahayem Chumash in front of you, is on page 696. Lo tasu avil b'mishpat, lo tisa f'nei dal, v'lo tedar p'nei gadol, b'tzedek tishpot amitecha, lo telech rachil b'yamecha, lo tamot al damreecha. Ani Adonai, lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha, tochiach et amitecha, v'lo tisalav achet, lo takom v'lo titor et b'nei yamecha, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, ani Adonai. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 15. You shall not render an unfair decision. Do not favor the poor or show deference to the rich. Judge your kinsmen fairly. Do not deal basely with your countrymen. Do not profit by the blood of your fellow. I am the Lord. You shall not hate your kinsman in your heart. Reprove your kinsman, but incur no guilt because of him. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your countrymen. Love your fellow as yourself. I am the Lord. What can we say about all of this? The Torah says that we should treat each other equally. Don't look at the outside of a person and see wealth, see the clothes he or she wears, and judge that person justly or unjustly. We need to not look at the outside, but we need to look at the inside. And we need to not stand by the blood of our neighbor. We need to, if you see someone doing something wrong, don't incur guilt because of them, okay? Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge. How many of us can live up to that ideal of not bearing a grudge? That is a tall order for any of us. And then the final penultimate, or the ultimate verse, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You shall love everyone as yourself. Aliyah number 2. Excuse me. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 19 through 22. Et chukotai tishmoru behemtecha lo tarbia kilayim sadacha lo tizra kilayim veged kilayim shatnez lo yale alecha Ve'ish ki yishkav et isha shichvat zecha vehi shivcha necharefet leish v'hofde lo niftata o chufsha lo nitan la bikoret yeh lo yamatu ki lo chupasha ve'hevi et Hashamol Adonai el petach ohel mohed el Asham ve'chiper alav hakohen be'el ha'asham lifnei Adonai al chatoto asher chata v'nislach lo mechatato asher chata. You shall observe my laws. You shall not let your cattle mate with a different kind. You shall not sow your field with two kinds of seeds. You shall not put on cloth from a mixture of two kinds of material. Now, that line is really fascinating, and it'll go right by you, and you won't realize its import. It says, "You shall not put on cloth from a mixture of two kinds of material." Okay, and it uses the word shatnez. Okay, it's a word you may not be that familiar with. Shatnez is an interesting word. There are 5 letters: a shin, ayin, a Taf, a Nun, and a Zayin. Shatnez. Those 5 letters, if you were to look in the Torah scroll, there are certain letters that have little flourishes called tagim on their. They look like little decorations almost on the letters, but only these 5 letters in the entire Torah scroll. Of all the 22 Hebrew letters, these 5 are the only ones that have those flourishes. But we don't know why. It's just interesting that it follows this particular word, shatnez. We are not supposed to mix our cloth with 2 kinds of materials. In other words, don't make a cloth that has wool and linen. Okay, wool we know comes from a sheep, right? Comes from an animal. What's linen? Well, linen in the Torah is defined to be flax. Okay, let me see if I can get Okay. When I was taking a Talmud class when I was in Israel, we came upon this word for flax. It's the English word flax, and the Hebrew word escapes me at this very moment, but it doesn't really matter. But I asked, what is that? I didn't know what it was. And the maintenance guy who was just outside the door must have heard me ask that question. And he poked his head and he said, "Give me a minute." About 2 or 3 minutes later, he came in and he plopped this fibrous material down in front of me. And I went, he said, "There's the answer to your question. That's what flax is." I said, "What is it?" He apparently went outside the Schechter, the rabbinical school was in, right outside the Israel Museum, and there was a plant outside. It was a very fibrous plant, and it had this material. And I was told that this is a plant-based material that they used to make clothes from. They used to take this fibrous material, okay? You know that cloth that makes you itch? That's what this is, okay? So it's a poor man's cloth, basically, okay? But in the ancient world, that's what they used to make cloth because they didn't have the silk. They hadn't imported it from China yet, the little silkworms. So they used flax. And we are told not to mix plant-based material with an animal-based material in our clothes. And we're not told why. We're just told not to do it. It's not something I know that there are a lot of people. I grew up in an Orthodox world, and people would look at labels of clothes to see if it had a mixture of linen and wool in it, and they would not buy something. Brad Artson, the dean of my rabbinical school, when we were getting close to ordination, I asked him, where's a good place in Pico Robertson to get a suit? And he sent me to this place called Malibu. It was a clothier. And he said he goes there because the clothes that are made at Malibu are guaranteed not to have this mixture in them. Therefore, they were kosher clothes. You didn't know that clothes could be kosher, right? And so all the suits that I bought from then on came from Malibu, and I knew they did not have this mixture in them. And Then I discovered, because Rabbi Artson did a lecture on it, that this is something that we're supposed to stay away from, because it renders us what? Unholy. It renders us unkosher. But then I come to find out that the priest clothing that's described in the Torah has exactly this mixture in it. Okay? And not only that, here's the most shocking thing, but what we wear, our prayer shawl, has exactly that mixture as well. The cloth is linen, the tzitzit are wool. Okay? So within my prayer shawl, I have what we're told not to mix. Okay? And remember what I said, this is we're reading the holiness code. Okay? We're reading how God expects us to be holy. God says, I am holy, therefore you shall be holy. Whatever that means, okay? But in order to be holy means to come close to God, okay? Outside of your presence with God, don't wear these mixtures of material, because only in the presence of God can we wear them. So rather than something that renders us unkosher, it actually renders us more holy and more approachable to God. Only in prayer are we allowed to have this mixture. I don't know why, but I just found this fascinating. I just found this absolutely fascinating. I think about this every now and then. And here, like I said, is a verse that goes by 2 seconds, and you don't even think about what this verse means. So I'm going to end. I know I said I was going to do 3. I'm only going to do 2 because I talk too long, which I generally do. And I lost my. Here it is. Okay. I'm going to now do a Mishaberach for those in and out of our community in need of a special blessing for spiritual, physical, emotional healing. And notice this list that I read every time we read this Mishaberach list is quite long, and it's unfortunately growing. I think it's really, really important. I think because of the size of the list, not only does it tell us that there are people in our midst that need our blessing, that need our attention, because when we hear a name, we have a duty to get in touch with that particular person and offer them some amount of comfort. But it also means that it's important to you as well, because we all need to share with each other those that are suffering in our midst. Those on chat, you may type in a name as I read my list. I will go ahead and hopefully add those names. Mi sheberach avuti Avram Yitzchak Yaakov Sarf Gorach Avalea Hu Yivarech V'Rapeh Et. Helen Byrne, Rhonda Blitz, Brooke Ben Elisheva, Sheila Guidry, Chana Batzar, Linda Smith, Marjorie Allen, Charles Miller, Sherry Russ, Iris Bat Rivka, Becca Martinez, Isaac Ben Joseph, Marsha Orange, Harab Malki Tzedek Ben Barucha, David Kelman, Yael Bat Nami Rivka, Natan Yaakov Ben Nami Rivka, Stephen Schaefer, Mike Watts, Deborah Winkler, Benjamin Ben Miriam, Catherine Josie, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Dina, Yechiel Michal Ben Menachem Nuchem, Jerry Weisenfeld, Kate Booley, Jeannie Meisler, Miriam Batina, Tarab Martinez Fernandez, Liz Wolko, Deanna Barber, Miriam Bat Rivka, Taraz Bat Ruth, Mark Platnick, Marlone Jermaine Barnes, Virginia Madden, Raymond Labato Jr., Natalie Copeland, Christopher Hill, Lorenzo Rivera, Tana Boulard Rivera, Gittel Tamar Bat Miriam, Sarah Shoshana Bat Nami Rivka, Joseph Dumas, Marcia Hudson, Jed Jackman, David Markowitz, Scott Decker, Bela Bas Rivka, William Williams, Marilyn Fadomsky, Jim Mittenswy, Lucy and Tilly Colwell, Danny Bierman, Sheila Decker, Eugene Labato, Rizal Bataraz, Roland Young, Marilyn Owens, Matt Zobel, Shannon Howard, Tim Whitmer, Nami Rivka Bat Miriam, Benio Nizaz, Jeff Colwell, Margaret Colwell, Roberto Rivera, Holly Knowles, Ken Love, and Elisheva Batsara. V'et kol achim b'kila kedusha Agudath Ezrat Zachem v'kila Temple Beth Or, and all of the people in the country of Ukraine. HaKadosh Baruch Hu malei rachamim malim b'chatzchem v'chapotam v'shlach leim refuah shleim min hashman nefesh v'udaguf b'to'ok sha'ach olei Yisrael v'chshabati l'mizog u'refuah karov alav ha'shtabak alav zman kariv v'nomar amen. And I wish all of those suffering a refuah shlema, a quick and complete healing. And thank goodness I have intelligent colleagues who are with us this morning. Charles informed me of the word that I was missing, and that's pishtan. The Hebrew word in the Bible is pishtan. I never ever knew what pishtan was. It always got translated as flax. And I never knew what it was till that maintenance guy in Israel did a very, and by the way, I still have that piece of pishtan in my office. And I bring that out every now and then when I have a class. I plop it down just like he did. We now turn to page 183 to return the virtual Sefer Torah. Please rise as the ark is open. Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Ki nishkav Shemo levado, Hodo al eretz v'shamayim, Vayaret eret le'achavo, Tila lecho, Chasidav, Livnei Yisroel am karovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Mizmor leDavid, Havu ladonai b'nei Elim, Havu ladonai kavod vos, Havu ladonai kavod shemo, Hishtach Adonai be'adat kodesh, Kol Adonai al hamayim, El kavod irim Adonai hamayim rabim, Kol Adonai ba'koach, Kol Adonai be'adar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vayshabech Adonai et alzei halvanon, Vayarkidem kemo egel, Lebanon v'Sirion kemo ven rehimim, Kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yecholel ayalot, Vayechesop nyaharot, Uvehechalo kulo omer kavod, Adonai lamabul yashav, Yeshev Adonai melech le'olam, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivorech et amo v'shalom. Page 184. Uvnucho yomah. Ki lekach tov natati lachem Torati al tazovu Etz Ahayem lamachazikim ba v'tomcheha neushar deracheha tarchenoam v'chon netivoteh shalom Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Kadesh Ameinu Kikedem. You may be seated. Thank you, Charles, for that reminder, by the way. I appreciate that. There's a question that we ask a lot. So tell me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you remember you're asking your own children that question long ago, or maybe recently? My oldest son, Joel, wanted to go into some technology field with computers. Check. Justin wanted to be a marine biologist. Didn't make it. Adina was a wild card. At first, she wanted to be a nurse, then a doctor, then a graphics designer, and finally she wanted to run a funeral home. I'm going to let that one just hang there. Often when we adults meet a child for the first time, we try to engage him or her in some kind of discussion. We ask the child about their interests, or where she goes to school, and the child has any hobbies. Invariably, we always seem to come around to the same question, no matter how young the child happens to be. So what do you want to be when you grow up? I've always found this question to be a little odd. First, how is a child supposed to know what she wants to be when she grows up? I mean, most of us don't know what we want to be, and we're already adults. And second, who knows how many times the child would change his or her mind between now and adulthood? Even in college, most students will change their course of study 2 or 3 times before they settle down and concentrate on one particular subject. And even then, there's no guarantee that a person's college major will be their field of professional involvement. Besides, today, when people were living longer and working long after the traditional age of retirement, there is a good chance that many of us will have not one, but several careers in the course of a lifetime. So at the very least, maybe we should ask a child, what kinds of things would you like to be when you grow up? I wonder then why we ask children, what do you want to be when you grow up? I suspect that this question has more to do with our priorities as adults and how we see ourselves than it does with our interest in who this child really is. As adults, we define ourselves in terms of what we do for a living. We are teachers, accountants, lawyers, business entrepreneurs, social workers, doctors, insurance salesmen, and yes, even rabbis and cantors. Sure, we say we are first and foremost someone's spouse or parent or child. We might even define ourselves in terms of our Jewish identity. But that is not how we really see ourselves. That is not who we are. For most people, I suspect they are the work they do or the profession they have chosen for themselves. So, who are you is defined by what we do, and our worth is often measured by what we earn, how much responsibility we hold, and how we are perceived professionally by others. In fact, we even say this in so many words. When talking about others, we sometimes ask, how much is he or she worth? As if a person's worth can be measured in dollars and cents. In our world, too often, identity comes down to these superficial considerations. And when a child is no more than 4 or 5 years old, we already begin conveying this message to them by asking them what they want to be when they grow up. I'd like to suggest that being is not defined by the titles which precede our names or the office we hold. It certainly shouldn't be defined by monetary considerations. Being is what type of person we are, how we live, and how we interact with others. Being is measured by what we contribute to those around us. In religious terms, being is defined by the extent to which we live consistently by a set of moral and religious standards, the extent to which we answer to a higher authority in life, and if we see ourselves not as the epicenter of the world, but as servants, as doers, and givers. Today's Parsha, Kedoshim, challenges the commonplace ways in which we define personhood. Leviticus chapter 19 is the single most important chapter in the entire Torah, and possibly the entire Bible, even more important than the Ten Commandments or the Shema. Known as the Holiness Code, it provides us with a powerful and succinct definition of how we are to live and what we should strive to become. Some of the most important statements in the Bible excuse me. I apologize. Of course. Bad timing. Some of the most important statements in the Bible can be found in this chapter. We are told to love your neighbor as yourself, to avoid falsehood and deceit, to treat the disabled and the weak with fairness. We are commanded not to stand idly by the blood of your fellow men, to show reverence to one's parents, to rise before the elderly, and to make sure that one's weights and measures in business have been properly calibrated. We are also commanded to keep the Sabbath and to venerate God's sanctuary, and not to consume blood, and to avoid all forms of idolatry. My goodness. In a nutshell, Leviticus 19 contains everything in the Ten Commandments plus. But what makes this chapter unique is how it begins. In the opening words of the Parsha, the Torah tells us, "Speak to the whole community of Israel and say, Kedoshim tihiyu. You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." The reason why this opening passage is so important is that it creates a frame around which to understand the rest of the chapter. After all, there's nothing inherently unique about the commandments in Leviticus 19. I'm certain that the people of Israel were not the first to believe that it's good to be honest, to honor one's parents, or to care for one's neighbor. Frankly, these are reasonable expectations of any civilization, which group of people would have come to understand without the benefit of the Torah or the revelation at Mount Sinai. What makes this chapter unique is that these laws are seen as an avenue that leads to holiness. More than that, what the Torah suggests that what we should strive for in life is becoming holy, and that to be holy, to be God-like, is defined not by what we do for a living, or what we have, or who we are related to, but by who we are as individuals, how we live and how we treat others. So sorry. We are most godlike when we are most human and humane. The power to sanctify begins with how we treat others, by the personal standards of integrity and dignity with which we live and what we do for others. We sanctify time by observing Shabbat. We sanctify words by guarding our tongue from evil and from speaking falsehood. We sanctify thought by studying and teaching the wisdom of Torah. And we sanctify our possessions by sharing them with others. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel puts it this way: a religious person is someone who holds God and man in one thought at one time, at all times, who suffers harm done to others, whose greatest passion is compassion, whose greatest strength is love and defiance of despair. This is a wonderful definition of holiness. It is what we strive for and how we become more godlike in our lives. It is also who we are and at least who we should try to become. So when we ask a child, what do you want to be when you grow up, I suspect we're asking her the wrong question. What's important is not what he or she wishes to do, but what kind of person he or she wishes to be. Unfortunately, we spend very little time emphasizing the quality of holiness and being. We push our children to excel in school, to do well in the SATs. We encourage them to get involved in activities that will look good on their college applications. We also encourage them to participate in all types of sports, as if being a sportsman is a measure of their characteristic. But at the end of the day, these qualities and skills come and go. No one has ever asked me if I played baseball in high school or what my score was on the SAT. They do not define who I am or what I am striving to become. They might win us admiration, but they do not necessarily make us worthy of respect. Leviticus 19 challenges us not to be clever, but to be kind, not to be strong, but to be sensitive, not to be first, but to remember what is foremost. Holiness is also more than morality. Most people define moral integrity in terms of not harming others. Holiness goes beyond this. For Jews, there are three categories of action. There is the good, there is the bad, and then there is the holy. In the commentary to the Etz Ahayem Chumash, the authors put it this way: to be holy is to be different, to be set apart from the ordinary. To be holy is to rise, to partake in some measure of the special qualities of God, the source of holiness. Holiness is the highest level of human behavior, human beings at their most godlike. So tell me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or better yet, what do you want to be right now? Whether you want to be president or the person who makes the beds in the White House. Judaism teaches us that you can be a holy person. Our faith expects so much more of us than simply not harming others. When we avoid harming others, we're neither holy nor good. We're simply not criminals. To be good is to promote goodness. To be holy is to recognize that through our actions, we can sanctify life, we can bring God into our lives and into the lives of others, but what we do and how we live and simply by who we strive to be. This is the challenge of Parshat Kedoshim. So I'll ask you again, what do you want to be? It's never too late in life to ask that question, and it's never too late to strive to answer it. Shabbat Shalom. I apologize for all my hacking. We now continue with Musaf. Ask everyone to please rise, page 185. 185 through 192. We will chant the first three brachot of 7 out loud together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim L'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chastei Avot ומביא גואל לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך חוזר פוקד ומשיח מגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם מפקד שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחי מתים הטהרה להושיע מוריד הטל מכלכל חיים בחסד מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים והופך עולים ומתיר אסירים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר מי כמוכם בעל גבורות ומדומה לך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמנת לחיות מתים ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים נעריצך ונקדישך כסוד שיח צרפי קודש המקדישים שמך בקודש ככתוב היד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש 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 Adonai Tzavot, Melech ha'aretz, Kavodo, Kavodo Malay, Olam Misharto, Shalom, Shalom, Shalim Zeh Lazeh, Ayem Mekom Kavodo, Liumatam Baruch Yameru, Baruch Adonai Mimkomo, Mimkomo Yifen Brachim Yachim Yachadim, Shemor Erev Avoke Bechol Yom Tamid, Palmahim Shema Umarim, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Hu Eloheinu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Moshienu, Vehu Yashmienu, Yashmienu, Barachamav, Shenit, 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 Le'enei Kochai, Leod Lachem Le'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem, uvdirei kachecha katuv lemor, yamloch Adonai le'olam, Elohayich Zion ledor vador, hallelujah, ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid god lecha, ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushak nakadish, ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid god lecha, ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushak nakdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu, mipinu lo yamush le'olam vo'ed, ki omelech kado, ki omelech kado, Kadoshata, dor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid god lecha, ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushak tanaktish, Baruch atah Adonai, ho'ela kadosh. We continue, page 204. Ein Eloheinu, ein Kadonenu, ein Kemalkeinu, ein Kemoshienu, mich Eloheinu, mich Adonenu, mich Kemalkeinu, mich Kemoshienu. No del Eloheinu, no del Adonenu, no del Malkeinu, no del Moshienu. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Tahu Eloheinu, Tahu Adonenu, Tahu Malkeinu, Tahu Moshienu. Tahu Shetiru Avoteinu Lefanecha et Kadoet Asamin. We rise for Aleinu, page 205. Atet gedula liotzer bereshit wasani kagoye aratzot shamanu kamishmachot adama shalostam chelkenu kahem v'gorelenu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim mishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchi hamlachim Baruch. Ushamo, Ushamo, Ushamo Echad. You may be seated. I do apologize. This week we will observe yard sites for Gloria Kupferberg, Joseph of Zardel, Israel Besser, Raphael N. Cohen, Ernest Dana, Deborah Finkelstein, Sarah Lolke Dreyer, Jenny Gusson, Harry Schulman, Sylvia Stamm. And of course, we offer condolences for someone we lost this past week, Arnie Fast, and we give condolence to all of his family members. Those observing yard sites and those who mourn, please rise. Join me, page 207, for the Kaddish Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash meraba b'yoma divrach gerutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'agalav izman kariv v'mo amen yehei shmei rabba mevarach le'lam omel maya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudisha b'richu le'lam min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran b'yoma v'yimaru amen Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen O se shalom b'imramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. And again, our condolences go to Marcia Orange and Paula Fast, who are with us this morning. Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Sorry for my throat just decided it had enough. I'm going to have to drink tea the rest of the afternoon with honey to get so I can stop hacking. Anyway, I'm very, very sorry about that. I can never predict. I was invited to do a Friday night service at Beth Meir in the Valley many, many years ago. I got up, I got 2 words out, and I lost my voice completely. Couldn't get a word out. And thank God I had a colleague there, and the rabbi of that congregation was able to continue on without me, but I was so embarrassed that I couldn't do that. I couldn't get through that service. Charles says, have chicken soup. Sounds good. Chicken soup is the cure for everything, I think. Irene made chicken soup for our daughter, Dina, who's recovering from COVID. She had COVID over this last week, was pretty sick. So Irene made chicken soup and took it over. As far as I know, she's completely healed. So, chicken soup. Tonight, we will end Shabbat together with the Alabama Community Virtual Havdalah. It's at 8 p.m. We welcome you to join us. If you would like to come and you did not get the Zoom link, email me at ravmalki@gmail.com. That's ravmalki@gmail.com, or whatever email you have for me, and I will be more than happy to send you the link before we start. So, and we always look forward to that. Okay, we're gonna complete our service, page 200. Oh, before I do that, I don't want to let the moment go before I wish all of the mothers out there and all of the mothers that we are remembering who are no longer with us, because tomorrow is Mother's Day. And I want to share with you just the beginning of what I talked about last night, which is some questions that were given to second grade children, and these were their answers. Okay? Just keep in mind, these are second graders. Said, why did God make mothers? She's the only one who knows where the Scotch tape is. Mostly to clean the house. To help us out of there, to help us get out of there when we are getting born. How did God make mothers? He used dirt just like for the rest of us. Magic plus superpowers and a lot of stirring. God made my mom just the same like he made me. He just used bigger parts. What ingredients are mothers made of? God made mothers out of clouds and angel hair and everything nice in the world, and one dab of mean. If you could change one thing about your mom, what would it be? She has this weird thing about me keeping my room clean. I'd get rid of that. I'd make my mom smarter. Then she would know that it was my sister who did it, not me. I would like for her to get rid of those invisible eyes in the back of her head. Why did God give you your mother and not some other mom? We're related. God knew she likes me a lot more than other people's moms like me. Bear Bryant of blessed memory was doing a PSA for Mother's Day. He read through the script, stopped, looked up, and he said, just call your mom. I wish I could. Yes, we should all call our moms or keep our moms in our memory this weekend. Happy Mother's Day. We will conclude our service, page 211. Can't promise, but I'll try and get through it. Adon Olam. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li'enasa v'chefso kol azai melech shemo nikra azai melech shemo nikra v'yacharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora V'hu haya, v'hu hoveh, v'hu yiyeh b'tifara, v'hu yiyeh b'tifara, v'hu echad v'yein sheni, laham shelo lehachbira, b'li reshit, b'li tachlit, v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra, v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra, v'hu eli v'chai go'ali, v'tzor chevli b'yetzara, V'hu nisi umanosli, minat kosi b'yom mekra, minat kosi b'yom mekra, b'yado afkid ruchi b'yet ishan v'yaira, v'imruchi g'miyati, Adonai li v'lo ira, Adonai li v'lo ira. Shabbat shalom. Bye-bye, everyone.